All right, I believe we are all here and we can get started.
This conference will now be recorded.
And I will call the meeting to order at 9:02 a.m. Welcome, everyone. I hope your week is off to a great start. I'm Nancy Wise, Commissioner and Board Chair. Let's do a round of introductions. And Pat, you're up.
Van Osro, Commissioner.
Joe Kirby, County Administrator.
Vance Crony, County Council.
Pat Malone, Commissioner and Vice Chair.
Erica Milo, Board Recorder.
Suzanne Hoffman, Health Department.
Matt Weatherall, Juvenile Department.
April Holland, Health Department.
Larry Bogan, Administrative Specialist.
Nancy, you were on mute.
I was just going to say I see a couple other people with us. I was just giving it few more seconds if anyone else wanted to introduce themselves.
Stephanie
Right.
Rath, Victim Assistance Program Manager.
Pam Vaughn, City of Corvallis Public Works.
All right. Next, we can move on to announcements. Are there any announcements? Hearing none. That will bring us to comments from the public. If there are any public comments, we will have a 3-minute clock, and this would be comments separate from our public hearings that are set for 11 a.m. Are there any comments from the public? Hearing none. That brings us to review and approve the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda? Hearing none, we can move into the work session. First up, we have COVID update from our Department Operations Center with Suzanne Hoffman and April Holland. Welcome.
Good morning. I'll just turn this right over to April.
Good morning. Thank you, Suzanne. Good morning, Commissioners. Good morning, Joe, and everyone else here today. It's been a couple weeks since our last update to you, and today I'll go over what's happening, some reasons why, how long we expect our current situation, and some recommendations from public health. Unfortunately, our COVID-19 reported cases continue to increase. In our last full week of data, starting Sunday, April 10th, we recorded 147 cases, which was up 44% from 102 cases the previous week. This brings our case rate to 155 cases per 100,000 residents. And our testing positivity rate has also increased from 5.3 up to 8.3%. Last time I mentioned that we were seeing a little tail ticking up at the right end of our epi curve of cases. Well, the tail has lengthened and curved upward, and it's now approaching the 200 cases per 100 residents mark, which at which the county would move into the CDC yellow community level, COVID-19 level on our case rate alone. And I want to pause on data for just a moment and talk about case reporting. COVID cases have been underreported from the start due to limited testing, asymptomatic infections, and for many other reasons. It was estimated sometime last year that about 1 in 4 cases was reported, so about 25%. And now with the rise of rapid antigen tests, which are administered at home, and a lack of reporting for those tests, it's now estimated that somewhere around only about 7% of cases are reported on the whole, or 1 in every 14. There's going to be variation in this as some areas continue to have stable testing volumes and others move away from PCR testing and increase reliance on those rapid antigen tests. For at least some time to come, reported case rates will continue to be an important marker for increased community burden of disease. We do have additional tools that can help us signal when activity is likely to rise. In Corvallis, we have wastewater surveillance, and that's been an accurate early predictor of rises in recorded cases. The increase, we're seeing an increase now in wastewater signal, and those increases we saw in July 2021 and January 2022 both accurately predicted the previous Delta and the first Omicron surge, each by about 3 weeks before the cases began to rise significantly. The rise that we're seeing now in the signal indicates another likely increase, and somewhat sustained increase in recorded cases is on the way. One thing to keep in mind that it's difficult to associate the size of the increase in the wastewater signal with the size of the incoming spike in cases. They're not always the same. So, for example, the wastewater surveillance signals were pretty similar in Delta and Omicron, and obviously we had much higher reported cases with the Omicron wave. Recent statewide wastewater surveillance shows a high level of the original BA1 Omicron in most parts of the state, and high signals of this current variant we're experiencing called BA2 in many areas all across the state, including here in Corvallis. In conversations with teams internally, with epidemiologists and public health leaders at the state, while it's clear that we do have a lot of transmission happening here in Benton County right now, it's highly unlikely that we are alone in this, given all we know about the wastewater surveillance and the reported cases not being pretty uneven in terms of reliability across the state and beyond. We don't have identified outbreaks right now driving our increases, and all age groups are affected right now. We have seen a recent increase in the share of reported cases among individuals ages 50 to 69 and 70 and up. People aged 70 and up make up about 11% of our population here in Benton County, and in the past 90 days, comprised about 5.4% of the cases. However, in the past 30 days, this group accounted for 11.5% of all cases. So from 5.4% of cases to 11.5% of all cases, that's a pretty big jump. For those aged 50 to 69, they account for 22% of our population. And in the past 90 days, their cases were 12.4% of total, compared with the last 30 days, during which the share was 20% of the total. So it's likely now that we're seeing a few things happening. The newer BA2 variant, which is the dominant variant across the United States and certainly here in Oregon, it's very transmissible, and I can't believe I can even keep saying this with how transmissible the BA1 Omicron variant was, but this one is even more transmissible. So here we are. The current national surge is increasingly affecting the remaining uninfected, who have through the pandemic been limiting social interactions, social distancing, and masking. And I just want to emphasize that it's so important that these infections have been delayed, particularly among our older population, until they have hopefully been vaccinated and boosted, and we now have therapeutics more widely available. Right now, uh, we at the health department are engaged in efforts to promote and increase access to recently approved second boosters for age 50 plus and for people who are immunocompromised. These efforts also include increased print and social media. We have a new direct mail flyer as well. In coordination with all long-term care facilities to ensure that second boosters are scheduled and opportunity is scheduled. Um, the efforts also include reminding people of the CDC, OHA, and local recommendations for continued indoor masking for certain individuals age 65 plus, immunocompromised, people who are at high risk, and those who are unvaccinated. And to remind the community to routinely assess risk and consider additional layers of protection, particularly when cases are on the rise in our communities. Thankfully, hospitalizations remain low. On Sunday, the 17th of April, there were 100 total people hospitalized with COVID in Oregon, 19 in Region 2, our region, and fewer than 10 locally. It's unclear exactly how much hospitalizations may increase with this current rise in cases, but the latest Oregon Health Sciences University forecast predicts 200 to 300 hospitalizations across the state in coming weeks. That's a big jump from where it is now, but far lower than what we saw with the Omicron rise, Omicron wave, which I believe was around 1,130 hospitalizations. And this will still cause impacts for many. The truth is with the increases that we're seeing and recording right now is universal masking worked very well to prevent transmission and reduce infection. And Benton County was really good at it. When we got into the Omicron wave, this became less evident as things like fit and filtration and consistent use of your mask became much more important. But Benton County residents time and again have successfully lowered transmission by using the tools we have at hand. And as we have ventured away from masking requirements and now ask individuals to assess their own risk, it's important that we recall those lessons from earlier in the pandemic. We've previously talked about watching the pandemic weather. There's no hurricane outside, but it's raining right now. So I'm asking our community members to consider additional precautions before we see additional impacts to our daily life, such as considering the activity that you may be engaging in, spending more time in outdoor spaces or in those with good ventilation, such as masking in indoor public spaces. It's also really, really important to seek testing if you have symptoms and to stay home with sick. And before I stop, I want to add one more thing. The rapid antigen tests are wonderful tools. They measure in a different way than a PCR test is going to measure. So a negative rapid antigen test doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have an infection. It means that you're not likely to be infectious in the moment. So if you're not feeling well and you have a negative test, it doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have a coronavirus infection. I would wait 3 or 4 days to take that test and stay home when you're sick. Just as simple as that. There's a lot more that I could go over, but I want to just stop it there and hear any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, April. I have a question I'm not sure you know the answer to, but where can individuals find more of the rapid tests?
Right. That's a great question. I have seen them on the shelves lately in pharmacies and in grocery stores. So there is more availability in retail settings right now. The federal government expanded the free at-home test through the USPS portal. So if people haven't received their 2 bundles of 4 tests, they can still request that online. We've also been distributing them out to community partners. Schools have them, and our focus here, of course, is to ensure that people who have less access have access to a test. But I am seeing them much more plentiful on the shelves than we did previously.
Thank you. Yep, it's definitely time for us to stock up again since we've made our way through our stockpile, and here my kids' school is closed again, so that will make for an interesting week the rest of this week. Any other questions, Pat, Commissioner Malone?
Yeah, April, earlier in your report, you mentioned a second booster, and I guess like a little more detail on that. Are there any downsides to getting a second booster now? I've heard some people talk about, well, I'll wait till September or the fall. So guess I'd like a little more information about boosters.
Sure. Thanks, Commissioner Malone. Well, yeah, the wording on the second booster is a little different than what we've seen previously for the initial series and the first booster, which were just outright highly encouraged. What you'll hear in CDC and other language is talk to your provider to determine whether a booster is right for you. And I think that cautious language, that guarded language, comes from the fact that offering this booster, the second booster at 4 months, is new, right? It's not something that there is plentiful data to support that this will stop infection from happening. However, there is sufficient data in the first booster and in other areas of COVID-19 vaccination that indicate that it will improve the antibody response, which is what your initial defense is when you encounter a COVID-19 infection. So this virus would enter your body, and if you have higher levels of neutralizing antibodies, that's going to be your first defense. And when you have a recent booster, there's more likelihood that it's going to knock it out before you even get sick. Whereas when we're fully vaccinated and have 1 booster shot, we've got a lot of memory-based immunity. However, our neutralizing antibodies, which is the first defense, it might be a little bit lower. So you could get an infection, your immune system starts to react, so you get sick. You could therefore then transmit to others, but then your memory immunity is going to take care of that infection for you. So I think the overall benefit is just different with the second booster. You have that memory immunity, which is you're already less likely to become severely ill and hospitalized and to die. However, you with that extra booster, you might just be able to clear that infection without it really having to go very far. Does that help?
Yes. Like say it's the messaging is a little more nuanced and just wanting to get a little clarity on that. A follow up, and it may be too soon, but I think on the news this morning, Moderna is thinking they have an improved vaccine that helps with more current variants, and I think the end of the story was we'll see you in the fall, kind of timeline. Do you have any inside information on what Moderna is up to?
I wish I had that kind of inside information, Commissioner. What I do know is that the companies are often they often make announcements, and then we have conversations with the various public health and other expert bodies that pour through the data. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what they've submitted or what they're going to submit. But I think it's really exciting, and I think that it's very likely that we're going to see more tailored vaccines as we move forward.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none. Thank you, April, and thank you, Suzanne.
Thank you. Take care.
Next, that will take us into our business meeting, and we have the consent calendar. Do I hear a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Do you want to say something? All right. Next, that brings us to proclamations. First one is in the matter of proclaiming the week of April 24th through 30th, 2022, Crime Victims Week with Stephanie Rath from the District Attorney's Office. Welcome, Stephanie.
Good morning. So I'm just going to read the proclamation this morning. So Americans are the victims of 20 million crimes each year, affecting individuals and communities. And in 2021 in Benton County, the District Attorney's Office Victim Assistance Program assisted 2,201 crime victims, providing 43,650 services. Since 1981, the United States has observed National Crime Victims' Rights Week to raise awareness about victims' rights and services. The Office for Victims of Crime has declared the 2022 theme, Rights, Access, Equity for All Victims. Victims' rights movement has resulted in the passage of laws at the local, state, and federal levels that established essential rights for the victims. Crime Victims' Rights Acts passed here in Oregon and at the federal level have provided victims with ways to participate meaningfully throughout the criminal justice process. The rights of crime victims are best protected when all participants in the criminal justice process, not only victims, are appropriately educated about victim rights. Supporting victims of crime is crucial to the U.S. justice system because our support honors the experiences of victims and allows them to find autonomy and empowerment through achieving self-defined goals. We must help victims access the justice, assistance, and support they need to rebuild their lives. Advocacy by and for victims of crime is itself a form of seeking justice, no less than justice sought in the courts. The accomplishments of the victim rights movement, achieved through compassion and collaboration, and built on the courageous advocacy of individual victims and their families across the country, inspire in us hope for future progress and greater healing. We are determined to respond to crime and violence by helping victims find not only support, recovery, and justice, but also a sense of hope for their future. National Crime Victim Rights Weeks provides an opportunity to recommit to ensuring that accessible, appropriate, and trauma-informed services are offered to all victims of crime. And the Benton County District Attorney's Office is hereby dedicated to strengthening victims and survivors in the aftermath of the crime, building resilience in our communities and our victim services providers, and bringing hope and healing to all victims and survivors. Therefore, is that your part or mine?
I think you can read it.
Okay. Therefore, be it hereby proclaimed the week of April 24th through the 30th, 2022 as Crime Victim Rights Week, reaffirming Benton County's commitment to creating a victim service and criminal justice response that assists all victims of crime during Crime Victim Rights Week and throughout the year, and expressing our sincere gratitude and appreciation for those community members, victim service providers, and criminal justice professionals who are committed to improving our response to all victims of crime so that they may find relevant assistance, support, justice, and peace.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Do I hear a motion?
I would move approval of the proclamation for National Crime Victims Rights Week in Benton County, number P 2022-006.
I will second that.
All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Is that an aye, Zan? I see a head nod. Perfect. Thank you. Motion carries. Next up, next proclamation in the matter of proclaiming May 2022 as Historical Preservation Month. And I believe we have with us Inga Williams from the Community Development Department.
Yes, good morning. I was hoping my vice chair would be here to proclaim this, but I don't see him online yet, so I will go ahead. In the matter of proclaiming May 2022 as Historic Preservation Month in Benton County, Proclamation number P 2022-005. Whereas historic resources are the physical manifestation of memory, and the long-term quality and character of a community is directly related to its willingness to identify, protect, and enhance those places that define and differentiate, and the educational, cultural, aesthetic, social, and economic values of historic resources contribute positively and significantly to our quality of life. And historic preservation maintains community character, promotes sustainable development, investment in the economy and tourism, revitalizes neighborhoods, fosters local pride, educates the community on the county's rich history and treasures, and creates vibrant, livable communities. And preservation and adaptive reuse of historic buildings honors Benton County's place in Oregon's story. And Benton County's theme for Historic Preservation Month is More Than Ever, This Place Matters, which encourages those who live in, work in, visit, or simply view historic resources to celebrate the importance of those resources to themselves and the community. And now, therefore, the Board of County Commissioners proclaims May 2022 as Historic Preservation Month in Benton County and invites everyone to join together to recognize and participate in this special observance.
Thank you, Inga. Do I hear a motion?
Yeah, I will move in the matter of proclaiming May 2022 is Historic Preservation Month in Benton County, Proclamation number P 2022-005.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Inga. Next up on our agenda are a couple of public hearings, which are scheduled to begin at 11 a.m. So we will take a break and come back at 10:58 so that we are ready to go by 11 a.m.
10:58, not 10:55.
Don't question me, Vance. No, just kidding.
I love
See
this.
you then. All right, it is 11 a.m. and I have confirmation that our live stream is back on. We will, however, just give it another minute or two. Oh, I see Commissioner Ojro. There we go. All right. Next up on the agenda is our first public hearing, which is for the solid waste collection franchise renewal application. And let's see. Tuesday, April 19th, 2022 at 11 a.m. is the time set for the solid waste collection franchise renewal application. The hearing procedure will be as follows. 1, staff will present the staff report. 2, applicant may but is not required to testify. 3, testimony by anyone else wishing to present evidence. Testimony will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Number 4, staff response. Following the testimony, the record will be closed and the board will deliberate and make a decision. Please try to avoid repetition. If someone else has already expressed the same thoughts, it is perfectly acceptable to state that you agree with the statements of a previous speaker. If you have documents or other evidence that you wish to have considered by this body, they must formally be placed in the record of this proceeding. To do that either before or after you speak, please leave the material with Erica Milo, who will make sure your evidence is properly taken care of. And I believe by leave the material with, we mean email. So perhaps Erica, you could put your email in the chat. That would be great. Finally, I will ask the board if any commissioner needs to declare any bias, conflict of interest, or ex parte contacts. Do we have any bias?
I would like to ask about that. In this case, ex parte contact would include contact with anyone who has an opinion on this matter, or because this is not a land use matter.
It's not a land use matter, but we do ask for that. And this is a franchise application. So if there's been contact with, if you've had communication with any members of the public that you feel might bias you or create some subjectivity in your deliberations, then that does need to be declared.
Okay, well, I did meet with a group of community members that reside in the Soap Creek area last week. And while the main subject of conversation was the landfill expansion and not the franchise agreement, we did touch upon the franchise agreement. So I have had a conversation on this matter with community members.
So Commissioner Ojro, do you think that you can render an objective and unbiased opinion decision?
I do.
Thanks. That's important for the record.
Commissioner Malone?
Yeah, I met with a group from Soap Creek, Tampico area several weeks ago, and the main topic of conversation was the landfill expansion, and I was there as commissioner meeting with constituents, and don't feel like have any bias on the topic before us.
This conference will now be recorded.
And I too met with what I believe to be the same group of individuals. And I did have a specific conversation with at least one individual where they expressed concerns about us approving this agreement and asked if it would be possible to extend until, I believe, December 23rd of 2023 to match up with the city of Corvallis. And I am still able to make an impartial decision. So with that, I will open the public hearing. And we will start with the staff report.
So I chatted with Daniel earlier today about the order of presentation, and we agreed that probably helpful for everyone for me to go ahead and kick off the staff report. I'll let Daniel present the staff report, which is technical, and go over the application. My task is to provide a little framework for today's public hearing. As the board knows, this is an application by Republic Services to renew its collection franchise agreement under Benton County Code. The Board of Commissioners is responsible for issuing franchises to garbage haulers who wish to operate in the unincorporated areas of Benton County. As you also know, Benton County only has one hauler that currently has a franchise, and that is Republic Services. The challenge with this particular application is that it comes hot on the heels of a fairly contentious land use proceeding this past fall. And I just want to kind of recognize that land use proceeding has certainly created a lot of interest and a lot of scrutiny in how Benton County deals with solid waste issues. But I also want to be clear that the land use application permit that was sought by Republic Services back in the fall was related to activities of its landfill operations. And as you know, the landfill has its own separate franchise agreement, which was concluded at the end of 2020. The land use application dealt with an expansion of the footprint of that landfill. Today's hearing is a third element, and that is the collection franchise. And while clearly Republic owns the landfill into which waste is deposited, it also owns the trucks and operates the collection service. So the franchise agreement is the collection franchise agreement is separate and distinct from the landfill operations, and it is unrelated to the land use application. Granted, it's the same company, but this is a separate consideration for the board. So I recognize that given the events of the last 6-7 months, it's kind of hard to separate those three ideas, but please remember the application before you is for a renewal of a collection franchise agreement by Republic Services. One thing also even though I just mentioned, hopefully we can segregate these ideas. I just want to point out that there is a effort underway to engage the community on topics related to the landfill, related to expansion of the landfill, and that is being facilitated by Oregon Consensus. We hope that process will be underway very shortly, and that process of community engagement will generate a lot of good ideas, hopefully some compromises on other ideas, but the initial objective of the Oregon Consensus process was to bring the community together with other interested stakeholders, including Republic Services, to determine whether there's a path forward on the land use component as it relates to the landfill. But it's entirely likely that engagement process will generate some ideas that relate to collection activities and ideas that could be incorporated into a franchise agreement. So just want to underscore the idea that while this collection franchise is separate and distinct, there could very well be spin-out ideas that come from this assessment process that the board may like to incorporate into a franchise agreement with Republic Services. With that said, I think I need to touch on the other significant component of the franchise agreement. Benton County, the unincorporated area of Benton County, typically, Republic serves approximately 35% of its customers within Benton County are in the unincorporated area, which means Corvallis and Philomath to a large extent drive the collection philosophy and services and programs simply by virtue of the greater number of users. the city of Corvallis has a parallel franchise agreement that is just beginning to kick off its renewal discussions. Unfortunately, Corvallis's franchise agreement expires at the end of 2023. We're just a little bit out of sync. This is something we've struggled with for decades. That's important because Corvallis engages in a much lengthier, much more detailed, much more in-depth series of negotiations with Republic Services for how collection services will be managed, operated, and presented to the public. Benton County has traditionally taken a back seat and merely taken the Me Too approach to the collection franchise, meaning Corvallis does the heavy lifting because its constituents comprise the greatest number of users of the collection services. Once that franchise has been negotiated by Corvallis, Benton County comes along and says, Republic, please incorporate what you're doing with the Corvallis residents to the unincorporated area. So the franchise agreements end up operating in parallel. What I'd like to let the board know is that we've talked to Republic about this, and Republic is in agreement that it would like to have similar terms and conditions for Benton County as it has for Corvallis. And we have talked prior to Republic submitting its application, we had talked about Republic's willingness to either reopen or renew a franchise at the end of 2023 to incorporate those provisions that Corvallis may include in its new franchise agreement to allow Benton County's franchise and Corvallis's franchise to be the same for Republic Service marching forward into 2024. So the idea that we're putting forward is that this renewal would be for, although it's for 10 years, we would ask Republic to come back in 2 with a new application for a new renewal that would essentially be to incorporate the elements of the Corvallis franchise agreement. Now, back to this assessment process. It's sort of our vision, if you will, that ideas that come out of this assessment process in the next 60, 90 days will be passed along to the city for consideration in its franchise agreement. It's our hope that those ideas get rolled into Corvallis's franchise agreement, and then when the 2023 renewal for Benton County's franchise comes along, those new ideas will be included. If, however, Corvallis does not incorporate some of those new ideas, there's nothing to stop Benton County from, in 2023, adding some of those, or at least discussing or considering some of those new elements in a new franchise agreement. So hopefully that, I apologize for the long-winded explanation. There's just a lot of ground to cover, and I want to make sure that you all are aware of all the nuances. One last thing, I know there was a couple of comments from the public about why can't we just extend the current agreement. Even though it's our ordinance, our code says the terms shall be for 10 years. So we're sort of, we've handcuffed ourselves. It's 10 years. So I will stop and turn it over to Daniel, who has the staff report component.
Thank you, Mr. Croney, and good morning, commissioners. Thank you for your time today. I briefly wanted to start off the staff report section with just a timeline of the events that have taken place leading up to this public hearing. So first, I'd like to note that the previous solid waste collection franchise for those areas outside of city limits in the county, that franchise expired on December 31st, 2021. The applicant, Republic Services, submitted their application to renew their solid waste collection franchise on December 1st of 2021. They also submitted a revised application on February 15th of 2022. The Solid Waste Advisory Council met to review the application that was submitted both on December 1st, 2021, as well as January 26th, 2022. And the group chose not to provide a formal recommendation on the application. We did, however, receive 3 public comments during those SWAC meetings regarding the application, which are in the staff recommendation. We also received some less formal SWAC input from individual SWAC members, and that input is also in the staff recommendation. I wanted to briefly review the criteria from Chapter 23 for the collection franchise requirements. So those criteria include determining if the applicant has a majority of the service accounts in the service area, if the applicant has collection vehicles, equipment, facilities, and personnel sufficient to meet the standards of Chapter 23 and other state and administrative rules. Does the applicant have sufficient experience to ensure compliance with Chapter 23? And does the applicant have general liability insurance in the amount and form satisfactory to Benton County? So in terms of the staff recommendations, staff note that the applicant has demonstrated that they meet the requirements of the criteria that I just listed. And staff also recommends approval of the renewal of the collection franchise with a list of conditions. And those conditions are listed in the staff report, but they largely reflect the conditions from the previous solid waste collection franchise, with the addition of the option to, or with the addition of reopening the collection franchise to better match the city of Corvallis's forthcoming franchise in 2023 that Mr. Croney just mentioned. And I think that about covers the summary of the staff report on our end. Is there any questions?
Any questions or clarification for Daniel? Commissioner Odro?
I just wanted to state that, I can wait and make this comment after you're finished, Daniel.
Okay, thank you. I also was just going to kind of cover the options that we see moving forward, and wanted to present those to you. The first option that we noted was the option to direct staff to prepare a draft board order approving the application with the conditions that we set forth in the staff recommendations. Another option is to direct staff to prepare a board order draft approving the application with amended conditions. And the third option being to prepare a board order denying the application and advising staff on how to proceed.
Commissioner Odro? Oh, and then, sorry.
I'll let Greg go ahead and speak, and then I'll.
Sorry, thank you. I just wanted to add one thing to what Daniel and Vance described, which is that the conditions that are in the staff's recommendations probably would need to be modified slightly. Condition B is the one regarding the 2023 reopener. The way it's worded in that condition, it's fairly specific to modifying the franchise agreement to reflect what the City of Corvallis franchise agreement entails. And if you wanted, I think, I mean, we haven't discussed this thoroughly, but I think if you wanted to expand that to also incorporate things that might result from a consensus-based approach that the city of Corvallis might or might not choose to incorporate. We might need a little more latitude within that condition. So I just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that clarification. Anything, oh, Commissioner Ojo?
Is this the right time for me to jump in then with my comments and questions? I want to say that I feel like we approach all of this material in a very ahistorical way. I recognize that when you have a franchise agreement that renews only every 10 years, it's highly unlikely that you will have the same commissioners on the board. And none of us were here back 10 years ago. And it's highly unlikely that you'll have the same staff in place. I believe that among the key staff, Vance, you were definitely here. Greg, you may also have been, but you were not responsible for this program at the time. So there's been significant turnover. One of the questions I asked was why in our code there are separate sections for waste collection and for recycling, and why the recycling clauses don't really relate to this collection franchise. And without going back and doing that digging and looking at the board meetings back 10 years ago, or when this was last amended, it was actually the case, we don't know. So I feel that we need to do a better job when we approach this type of franchise agreement at looking at the history and looking at the decisions that were made previously and what considerations were taken into account, just so that we can make more informed decisions moving into the future. So with that said, I also would have preferred if we had asked our Solid Waste Advisory Committee about those recycling provisions and the reduction and waste reduction provisions in Chapter 23 in advance, so that we could have some updated criteria to compare this collection franchise to. The criteria that are here are pretty dated, very minimal, and perhaps we would have looked at this application a little bit differently if we had actually taken the time to review the code prior to the review of the collection franchise. So I realize I'm speaking primarily to process. A lot of that's water under the bridge, but maybe we can take a look at our own code prior to the time that we have that reopener in 2023, so that we have more rigorous criteria to use when we look at any franchise agreement. And so that we can also discuss whether we want to have that separate parallel recycling language and collection language, and no fixed time to put together requests for proposals that would handle both of those elements of collection. I do have one other comment that's not related to process, and that is the one about complaints and dealing with customer complaints. I note that in the application, what we are asking Republic Services to agree to is that they will document all written complaints. And that doesn't include anything that comes by telephone. I suspect that telephone is one of the dominant modes of complaint at this time. And I'm not sure whether written also captures email, which is now a dominant mode of communication. Back then, it probably would have been written as in a letter. So I would like to see us address that a little bit more clearly, so that we can have a better record of complaints from our constituents about the collection services that they receive from Republic Services under this franchise.
All right, any other questions, Commissioner Malone?
Yeah, I have similar concerns to Commissioner Ojero on that some of the language is dated And I guess one question, I know we've chapter 32 of our code. I know we've been working on that. A question of how to amend our code so that we're not in this position of being 1/3 of the collection area or collection volume, but having to deal with these issues before Corvallis does. And it's a built-in glitch, and it would, and I realize these things aren't done casually or easily, but this seems like something at least worth looking at to get away from this awkward timetable. And then my other question, Daniel had quite a few dates in there. So is it accurate we're currently, Republic is currently operating without a collection franchise agreement?
Yes, that's correct, but I see Mr. Crony's mic is on to respond as well.
Yes, we're treating the current operation of Republic very similar to how we treat land use code violations, where as long as the applicant, in this case Republic, has engaged in the process of renewal, we're going to consider them to be operating lawfully. If, however, there's a denial of the application today, then that grace period, so to speak, would end.
Okay, because that's part of my question and concern, similar to Commissioner Ojero, is a lot of information, and we've got the Vance mentioned the Oregon consensus process that's I guess close to starting, and wondering if we can have some community conversation, realizing a lot of the emphasis probably would be on landfill expansion proposal, but this is obviously getting commingled with that, and some of the concerns go to both agreements. So I guess I'm looking for a little advice or clarification. Can we postpone this? We've obviously gotten some feedback from the community, but our plan is to have a larger community discussion, and I would feel more comfortable having that discussion before proceeding on this, if that's possible.
I think, is that maybe a better conversation to have during deliberations, like potential steps forward? So we can come back to that. Thank you.
Yes, just to pop in, I think Commissioner Malone, if there are other folks who wish to testify, that may provide an opportunity that satisfies your desire for community input. I don't know, but remember, as a public hearing, this is an opportunity for people to provide their input.
Commissioner Ojero?
I do have one more clarifying question. The last clause of the recommendations compiled by staff reads that Republic Services shall coordinate recycling efforts with other solid waste collection efforts in Benton County Wasteland to further enhance recycling and recovery efforts and to meet wasteland recovery goals as mandated by the state. And it's a a lofty sentiment. It's a great goal, but I don't know what it really means with respect to this franchise agreement. And so I would love some clarification about the intent and the meaning, and whether Benton County Wastershed refers to just the geographic boundaries of Benton County or to all of those in the wastershed that use landfill, or and what we intend by that paragraph.
Yeah, I can speak to that if you don't mind. So that paragraph, I will briefly note that that paragraph also is in the previous franchise language as well. The intent of including that paragraph for this staff recommendation was mainly to acknowledge that solid waste collection coinciding with coordinated recycling collection is pretty critical to maximizing the recovery of materials in the county. And to answer your question specifically about Benton County Wastershed, that technically is covering the entire county up to the county line boundaries and includes the incorporated cities as well. And those waste sheds are essentially how all of the solid waste data is collected and partitioned by the state. So the waste shed recovery goals that we have are for countywide, including those incorporated areas, not just the county's jurisdiction.
Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Any other questions by commissioners or staff or comments before we move to applicant testimony? Hearing and seeing none, we will move on to applicant testimony. And I believe we have with us Julie Jackson. Welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate being here today. I would just like to reiterate that we've had a very long partnership with Benton County. We have continued to move forward in terms of recycling and waste collection. We now offer in Benton County more services than most locations. So in Benton County, we have 5 different sizes of containers available. We offer on-call service, and we offer monthly service in Benton County. I believe monthly service is offered in Benton County and very few other counties throughout the state, but we do offer that at the request of Benton County. We also offer food waste recycling in the county, and basically the city of Corvallis mirrors the same services as Benton County. One of the other things I'd like to point out is that we have operated in good faith for the past 3+ months without a franchise agreement, and we've continued to pay franchise fees during that time because of our long partnership with Benton County. But we do get a little anxiety from operating without a new franchise agreement, without a signed agreement, and we would ask that you move forward with this. And then if you have other concerns at the point when we start negotiating with the city of Corvallis, as we've already stated, we're more than willing to renegotiate at that point if there are things you'd like to add, or if there are things that Corvallis maybe hasn't looked into that you'd like to add. One of the things we see out on the horizon is commercial food waste. There is a movement to add commercial food waste as a mandatory element in Corvallis, and that would also include Benton County, I believe. There's a group called You Can, I believe, that has that out there. We're working with them on what that could look like, but anything that comes our way, we are happy to look at and operate at the request of the county. So basically, we've always operated with a you tell us what you'd like, and we will make that work. So I think we've been a good partner. I think that a contract makes us much more comfortable, and we would ask that you move forward and renew this application and then make changes as you see fit. But we haven't received any information from the county as to changes that you'd like to make at this point.
Thank you, Julie. Questions or comments for Julie? Commissioner Ojro?
Just one clarifying comment. I think that some of the, our question, and I think it's primarily for Vance, that some of the changes that we may want to make might require taking a look at Chapter 23 of our code to make sure that we have the criteria that we want to use and are looking forward with respect to collection and waste reduction and recycling. So I'm just asking this reopener in 2023, I think that would set us up to be able to do the kind of homework we need to do, correct?
Yes, I would think that between now and let's just say September, October of 2023 would be ample time to examine chapter 23 and incorporate any changes you'd like to see, and then have them become effective. That's the most important piece. Have them effective by the time a reopener occurs. And unfortunately, Daniel, I'm looking at you because you'd have to carry the ball on that.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for the applicant? Hearing and seeing none. Thank you, Julie. We will move on to public testimony. If you would like to have up to 3 minutes to testify, please put your name in the chat and I will call on you. And again, if you have any documents that you would like to submit to have become officially part of the record, Erica's email is in the chat. You can send those documents to that email. And we will give it just a minute to see who would like to testify. So I see one name in the chat so far. Is that Camille Hall? Am I pronouncing that right? Please correct me if not.
That's right.
Welcome, Camille.
Thank you.
Go ahead and proceed.
Okay. So my first question is, could you explain briefly how Chapter 23 is used to set the percentage for tipping fees? And I'm realizing that I don't even know if it falls in the collection agreement or in the landfill agreement. Do you want to start with that or shall I continue?
Well, yes, please continue because it's a chance for you to communicate with us. And then if we would like to ask those questions of our staff afterwards, we can do so. Thank you.
Okay. My recommendation is that we set a franchise fee that will meet or exceed the fees that other counties who are currently sending waste to Coffin Butte are charged. I think it's really important that we recover enough money in these tipping fees, one, to discourage people from just a pure profit motive of dumping at Coffin Butte, and also to give us some money to deal with the eventual filling of Coffin Butte. I mean, we will not have this resource forever. So I think it's important that we charge sufficient fees to allow us to plan for what happens when the landfill is filled, and to, possibly look at recycling options such as solid waste sorting systems, and maybe to do some research on, new and expanding recycling markets. The recycling markets have been devastated with the Chinese stepping out. And I know that there are new, smaller markets that are developing that we could take advantage of. So that's my primary concern, is that we charge enough to make our tipping fees competitive and not just the cheapest around. And also to consider that there are a lot of people whose waste could more easily be sent to Arlington than ours could. They certainly could use rail lines, and if they are closer to Arlington than we are, I think that's where they need to go. Or at least we should make our fees competitive so that that's attractive to them. So that's the end of my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Camille. Is there anyone else who would like to? Okay, I see sent to the organizers, Kevin Kanaga would like to testify. Kevin, welcome and go ahead.
Well, thank you. So I would want Vance to explain more about the Philomath collection agreement. He mentioned that Corvallis runs parallel with Benton County, but is there a separate agreement with Philomath? So my concerns with this collection agreement as some of you commissioners noted, the timing is off. People aren't really aware of us. It doesn't sound like even the chapters are up to date, so things need to be done. I guess Vance says there's no way to just extend this agreement, so that's off the table. But I think enough meat has to be put in any agreement that you agree with, so that we can match up with not only match up with Corvallis, but put in place recycling that would really help Benton County. I mean, there's a lot of deep recycling. This, as mandated by the state level of recycling, really isn't in-depth recycling. There's a lot more that could be recycled. And there's companies out there that are willing to engage in that business with a much lower profit margin than corporate collection companies are willing to. So I really think that needs to be a big part of it. And I hope that Benton County would protect themselves so that, you have a good relationship, that's great, but in other counties, there's lawsuits being filed because the collection franchises, they create a monopoly. They're exclusive agreements, and these little companies can't get in. It's innovation. It's what we all need. So those are two things that I really think need to be in this agreement that you're looking at moving forward with. So those are my comments, and I hope to hear from Vance on Philomath. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. And I see that Mark Yeager would like to testify. Mark, please correct me if I mispronounced your last name.
No, Commissioner, you have that correctly. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Go
Great,
ahead.
Thank you. All right. Thank you very much. Good morning, Commissioners. My name's Mark Yeager. My address is 37269 Helm Drive in Corvallis. And I appreciate all of the background information that's been presented so far in terms of the context with the agreement and the Benton County Code, et cetera. I would urge the commissioners to continue to operate with the expired franchise agreement because I think that gives us ultimately more flexibility when it comes time to looking at what it is that we want long-term from a collection franchise agreement or possibly collection franchise agreements. If this agreement is extended as it is, it precludes the possibility of considering proposals from other service providers, both for garbage hauling and, more importantly, for recycling services and the collection and processing of organic waste. So I think it's a mistake to sign a 10-year agreement with a limited opener clause that allows for maybe only certain things that Republic Services might agree to as part of that opening process, rather than letting the process develop that's soon to begin with the community engagement process, coordinating with the city of Corvallis in particular in their efforts to look deeply at their franchise agreement and give us more opportunity as a community to proceed into the future in the materials management world, to give us the ability to substantially reduce the amount of waste that's being generated, taken to the landfill, etc. I do believe that there are other service providers that would be eager to come into our community and help us improve the recycling rates. I noted that you did get testimony from Joel Geyer, where he made 3 points regarding a reason why we should take a pause in this process. And I support his comments, but in particular, the fact that the recycling rate in Benton County has not substantially changed in 20 years is a stunning number. That means, at least from my perspective, either it's too complicated for people to do, maybe the service provider isn't putting enough energy into the process, but I think there's an opportunity for us to take a serious pause and really look at the future, not get ourselves tied into a 10-year agreement with a limited opener clause. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mark. Is there anyone else who would like to testify? Anyone who is calling in on the phone or is otherwise unable to put their name in the chat? Is there anyone else who would like to testify?
Oh, I had a question.
Is this, okay, could you please state your name?
Ronna Foster,
Thank you.
and I'm in Corvallis. Do you want my address?
I think that's okay. Please continue.
Oh, I had a question about the chapter 23 and so 23.310 terms of franchise or permit. A, the term of collection shall be 10 years. So if we renew the franchise agreement, as Mark stated, it's an opener clause. So how much negotiation room will there be in 2023 with the terms of the collection franchise agreement opener clause to change any of the 10-year agreement? Like, where is there wiggle room to legally do things with this one service provider for such things as recycling? And so I'm not sure if it's all understood correctly at 2023 what legal rights the county would have to negotiate any changes. So that's just kind of unclear, but maybe it's all written out clearly in the staff report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ronna. And I see that Debbie Palmer would like to testify.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, Debbie, we can hear you.
Great. I don't want to add anything new. I just wanted to add my support, strong support to everything that Mark Yeager said, and Camille Hall and Joel Geyer and Kevin Kanega. They all had very important things to say, and I can't say it any better. That's all.
All right, thank you very much. Is there any other testimony? All right, hearing and seeing none, we will move into the staff response. And is there any response or comments, questions that staff would like to bring up?
So I guess I can try to answer a couple of questions. I'm going to kick one of them over to Julie Jackson just because she'll know. First one, I think Ms. Hall talked about tipping fees. I'm not quite clear what Ms. Hall was referring to. Tipping fees are what is charged at the landfill for garbage to go into the landfill. I suspect Ms. Hall, you're referring to collection fees. And so I'm not quite sure on that one, but I do want to make a comment about something I recall from the last time Republic came forward with a collection franchise renewal. This is 2011. Gordon Brown was our solid waste expert on staff at the time, and Gordon raised a very good point. And of all the things that have happened in the last 11 years, I don't know why this stuck, but it did. Gordon pointed out that there's a fine line for how much the haulers can charge for collection services. If you go too high, people in the unincorporated area will just take their trash and dump it into the forest, dump it onto private property where there are nobody around, so that they don't have to pay those collection fees. And that is one of the underlying factors behind what's called our dump stoppers program, is to try to prevent people from not paying the collection fees and just dumping out in the forest. So I just want to bring that point up. It's something Gordon raised in 2011 because I thought it was an interesting point that I didn't appreciate. So Mr. Kanega, the Philomath agreement, I believe, it seems to me 10, 11, 12 years ago, I was told that Philomath's agreement parallels Corvallis, but I'm going to kick this one over to Julie Jackson to answer because she would know that better than
I. Thank you, Vance. The Philomath agreement does parallel Corvallis, and it has the same timeline as Corvallis as well. And then when there's a moment, I would like to address recycling if that's possible.
So how about if I finish going through these questions and then we come back to you, Julie? Will that work, Commissioner Wise?
That'd be great.
Sure.
Mr. Yeager, about franchise precluding other providers. And this also gets back to something Commissioner Ojero referenced a little earlier about the RFP process. Benton County's collection opportunities are not limited to the current franchise holder. Our code provides the opportunity for any company to come in and approach Benton County about obtaining a franchise agreement. So there is no RFP process that goes out every 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, where we solicit input from companies and then we select a provider. That doesn't happen. Ours is an open market system where any company, any provider, any recycler who wishes to set up business in Benton County can do so. They just have to meet the conditions of our code, and the board has to give that company a franchise. So there is no, the door doesn't close to any other opportunities if a franchise agreement is granted. Ms. Foster asked about, is there, I think the question was, are there any legal impediments surrounding a 2023 reopener? And the answer is no. What we propose to put into the ordinance is a reopener to incorporate City of Corvallis elements and provisions that are currently not in place. I think Greg Verrett had a very good point that if that's the direction the board wishes to go, that we include in that condition that there be an opportunity to consider and negotiate other aspects that may not have been included in Corvallis's franchise, but which are of mutual interest to the county, Republic, and the community. So no legal impediment. I think at this point, we can, the reopener clause is drafted to allow both parties to move forward under new terms. I think I've captured everybody's questions. I see a couple in the. Thank you, Mark. It is not an exclusive. It's not an exclusive franchise. The county code does allow for other franchisees to come in, so that's not an exclusive franchise. Ms. Hall, my comment relates to the fee charged entities hauling trash. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I don't know how to answer that. I don't know what other fees might be.
All right, Julie, did you want to chime in?
I did. I just wanted to touch bases on recycling because I think there's some misconceptions out there about how recycling works. So we are not responsible for what is recycled in Oregon. We are responsible to what are called material recovery facilities, MRFs. We don't own a MRF in Oregon, and the material goes to a third-party vendor. In Oregon, there are really only about 4 major MRFs in the entire state, and they base what they accept for recycling on what there are markets for. So when I used to go in and talk to kids all the time, I always say, if nobody wants it, it doesn't get recycled. Now, that is all changing. There is a massive new change to the law in Oregon called the Plastics Pollution and Recycling Modernization Act. And that is a pretty exciting act that will pull in manufacturers, and it will require some extended producer responsibilities so that more material will be recycled in Oregon. We're very excited about that. A second thing that's happening is that Republic Services is building what we're calling a polymer center. I think most of the anxiety about what's not getting recycled revolves around plastics. So we will be working to get materials not only from Benton County and Lynn County, but from all of Oregon to this polymer center in Las Vegas, which sounds like a long way, but remember plastics were being shipped to Asian markets, so not so far. At this center, we will take more plastics. We will actually process those plastics, pelletize and flake that material and have it market ready, so that we can create a closed system that will allow for more plastics recycling. There are lots of things happening, but just to sort of reiterate, we don't control what's recycled. We are controlled by the people who send that material for recycling. And so I wouldn't make huge changes while we wait to see how the state adopts this new bill and how that plays into what we recycle. But we think that manufacturers are going to have a role. They're going to be paying for the end of life cost for many of these materials, and they'll be discouraged from selling materials in Oregon that can't be recycled. So lots of things happening. I think it's all positive, and you know, it's unfortunate that we don't know exactly what that looks like today.
Thank you, Julie. And so we had a lot of good questions and topics brought up with our testimony and some in the chat. And I think a lot of those questions go above and beyond this and are good questions to take to our community engagement process with Oregon Consensus. So I'm looking forward to that. Was there any other comments that staff wanted to add before we close the public hearing? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. And we can move on to deliberations and discussing our next steps. There's a few things I would like to say, and but I want to give my fellow commissioners a chance to weigh in too if they would like to before I hog the mic. Commissioner Malone.
Well, I had a couple follow-up questions for Julie Jackson. I'm assuming that the plastic pollution, and then I lost the recovery effort, is at the 2025 effective date.
Yes, July 1st, 2025.
And this is the first I've heard of the polymer recycling. What kind of timetable do you have on that?
That opens in about a year. So that will open in 2023. And we'll be working with all of the MRFs in Oregon to get plastics to that facility.
Okay. That's because like one of the people who testified mentioned it's been my opinion that we haven't recovered from the Chinese not taking our commingled refuse 3 or 4 years ago, and so and we create a lot of plastic trash. So having a plan for that seems like a good idea. 3 years ago, I think all 3 commissioners and some staff did a road trip up to your operation at Brooks, the sorting center there. And there was a 20-year-old MRF in operation, but could you, and you just said you didn't have one, but it was my understanding that you were going to do a state-of-the-art MRF there. And I don't know if that's a separate company or just what but I'd be curious what the status is of that project.
So that MRF is not owned by Republic Services. That's owned by the Marion County's Hauling Association, of which we are one member, but that is a completely separate company. That new MRF that you're talking about is up and running. They are working out the kinks with the machinery right now, but that is what we call a C&D MRF. So that's not the curbside material that goes in the recycling. That would be construction and demolition, where they sort out anything that they can find markets for. Sheetrock, wood, metal, and cardboard are the primary materials that are sorted out there. And that is definitely an option for Benton County as well, to make use of that particular MRF. We've talked about that. That's not a part of this hauling contract. That is a part of the franchise or the host agreement with the landfill, but it's certainly something that's on the table. And we have been waiting to get the solid waste agency up there to view that until they feel like they've worked out some of the kinks and can really put on a good show for the group. And of course, we'd be happy to take the commissioners up there as well. It's when it's up and running at 100%, we think it's going to be a great facility and will definitely increase recovery.
Thank you, Julie.
Great.
And Julie, if us commissioners have any more questions about stuff that's not really related to this application, are you open to us contacting you maybe offline and chatting about
Absolutely.
it more?
Sure,
Thank you.
anytime.
Thank you. Let's see. So I want to touch on something that Vance mentioned, which is just the fact that, yes, this application is separate and distinct from the landfill land use application. But I mean, I can see how the optics of this might come across to some community members, because they are related in the sense of the big picture. And I don't want us to be giving the impression that we are being duplicitous or disingenuous. I think it's a separate topic, but I do see, I want to acknowledge that it can be concerning to some community members at the same time. So as far as I can see, we have a couple different choices for moving forward. We can either choose to approve the agreement. We could choose not to approve the agreement. So as Greg Verrett mentioned, we might want to clean up some of the language to be more specific about incorporating ideas that come out of our community engagement process that we will be embarking on. So if we would like to do that, Vance, how would you suggest that we proceed? Do we push it off to the next meeting? Thoughts?
If that's the direction the board wishes to go, I would recommend that the motion be to direct staff to make modifications to the reopener provision to incorporate the possibility of adding community engagement elements that come out of our community engagement that are not incorporated in the city of Corvallis's franchise. So it's essentially the alternative of directing staff to revise the conditions and bringing back in order.
And Greg, I see that you clicked on. Go ahead.
Yeah, I had some potential wording along those lines. So what Vance described is one way of modifying that, or it could be something like expanding condition B to say to include and mutually agreed upon outcomes of the current consensus-based process.
Thank you. Commissioner Ojero?
I definitely would like to be able to include elements that come out of the consensus process, but I'm a little uncomfortable about the mutually agreed elements component of it. I'd like to preserve our discretion as a Board of Commissioners to amend the agreement with a little bit more flexibility.
All right, other thoughts, comments, questions, motion? Commissioner Malone?
Yeah, I said this earlier. It seems like we have some information to digest. I appreciate Greg's trying to get some motion language. And then I agree with Commissioner Ojero about making sure our concerns are get into any kind of revisions with this agreement. So I'm not sure I'm quite ready. I guess I would like to be able to work on the language a little bit to make sure that it's clear what our goals are. It sounds like we're in pretty good agreement on option B of approving, but with amendments. And I just hearing things verbally, I'm having a little bit of a hard time making sure that everybody is talking about the same thing. So
would it be helpful if we took a couple-minute break and you could write down a potential motion that you'd like to make, or Greg could help maybe with the wording? Or am I misreading that?
No, I would appreciate Greg. Seemed like he had a pretty good start on the option B, and so maybe give a few minutes to sort that out and see if we have something we can agree to.
All right, let's take a quick break. We'll come back at 12:14. Zan, it looked like you had a furry tentacle there for a minute.
Yep.
All right, Vance, was there anything you wanted to add before I asked for a motion?
Yeah, I just want to point out that there is no order in the packet, and it was anticipated that board would direct staff to come back with either the recommendations that were in the staff report or to modify the recommendations and the conditions. And I think following up on Commissioner Malone's comment, I don't know that you need to have specific language now. I believe Greg has a very good idea of where the board is going and can craft a condition that reflects Commissioner Ogero's comments and Commissioner Malone's. That order with those modifications would be in the packet when this comes back for your approval of the order. And at that time, Commissioner Malone, you have a chance to take a look at the wording and make any minor modifications or major modifications for that matter that you'd like to make.
Thank you, Vance. Well, let me ask you this, Commissioner Malone, did you have a motion ready and all set?
I still need some help on that.
Okay. So
I don't know if Greg is, yeah, but Vance, that's helpful. And what's the timing on this coming back to the board?
I don't believe there's a board meeting next week. Joe and I had talked possibly about May 4th coming back. I don't know if that's still a possibility. It's either May 4th, or excuse me, May 3rd or May 17th.
Vance, just to interject, May 3rd is a really full meeting already. So I think we would likely have to come back on May 17th.
And there's a motion on page 25. Commissioner Ojero?
I'd be happy to make an attempt at a motion, see if we have a second. I move to direct staff to prepare a board order granting the solid waste collection franchise renewal with the conditions in the staff recommendation, except for the clause that referred to the reopener referring only to those elements in the Corvallis collection franchise. I'd like to broaden that clause so that it will refer to concepts coming out of the consensus process this summer as well.
All right, thank you. I'll second that.
Vance?
Erica, did you get that motion? It was probably the longest motion I've heard Commissioner Ojero ever make.
Yes, I believe so, and I will double check on the recording.
Thank you.
All right, so we have a motion made and seconded by Commissioner Malone. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, thank you very much, everyone. Any comments or questions before we move on to the next agenda item? Hearing none. That brings us to our next public hearing. Thank you, Daniel. Bye-bye. Let's see, second public hearing to amend the, let's see, trying to find my pages here. Emergency procedures of Benton County. Amending Benton County Code Chapter 32, Emergency Procedures of Benton County. And we have with us Sheriff Van Arsdal. Hello. All right, Tuesday, April 19th, 2022 at 11 a.m. is the time set for the public hearing in the matter of amending Benton County Code Chapter 32 to incorporate prohibitions on fires during declared fire season. All testimony, arguments, and evidence received during this public hearing must be directed towards the subject of the proposed code amendment The hearing procedure will be as follows. 1, staff will present the staff report. 2, any member of the public wishing to present general testimony will be given the opportunity to speak. Number 3, testimony from any representative of any other governmental body. Number 4, staff response. Please try to avoid repetition. If someone else has already expressed the same thoughts, it is acceptable to state that you agree with the statements of a previous speaker. If you have documents, maps, or letters that you wish to have considered by this body, they must be formally placed in the record of this proceeding. To do that, either before or after you speak, please submit via email to Erica Milo, who will make sure your evidence is properly taken care of. And Erica, if you could put your email in the chat once again. Finally, I will ask if any commissioner needs to declare any bias, conflict of interest, or ex parte contact. And I do not believe that I have any as well. All right, so with that, I will open the public hearing and we'll ask staff to present the staff report.
Thank you, Commissioner Wise. This is the topic that we discussed fairly extensively last week. This is a proposal to amend Benton County Code Chapter 32, which is our emergency procedures code, to include a provision that calls for banning fires within the unincorporated area. And I want to clarify, this is not what appeared in the newspaper this morning. The newspaper article talked about banning fireworks. This provision does not ban fireworks. The proposal would add to our code the ability for Benton County to have a no fire ban in effect in the unincorporated areas of the county anytime the state fire marshal declares fire season within Benton County or any of the districts that include portions of Benton County. It does not require the Board of Commissioners to do anything. It doesn't require staff to do anything. It's an automatic no burn ban that goes into effect at the time the state declares fire season within Benton County. The provision is also pretty straightforward. It gives the sheriff's office the authority to enforce the code, and so it would fall to the sheriff's office to enforce this provision of the code. Talking with the sheriff earlier this morning, he mentioned that there's a similar but not the same statutory provision that could be used in conjunction with our county code, but they're two separate provisions, but separate tools available to law enforcement. So with that, and I guess last thing, just reiterate, I did remove at the board's request the components of this provision that dealt with fireworks. So that's all I have on the topic, unless the sheriff wishes to add anything.
And I see him shaking his head, indicating no. All right. With that, we will open it up to any member of the public wishing to testify. And you can have up to 3 minutes to speak if you would like to testify. If you would like to do so, please put your name in the chat and I will call on you. And we will just pause and wait to see if there is anyone who will like to testify. Is there anyone calling in on the phone or is otherwise unable to type their name in the chat that would like to testify? Hearing none, I will ask for testimony from any representative of any other governmental body. Hearing none, we can move on to staff report, or staff response, excuse me, which I'm guessing is going to be brief. None from you, Vance. Got it. Let's see. With that, we can close the public hearing and move on to deliberations. My fellow commissioners, do you have any questions, comments, or motion that you would like to make? Commissioner Malone.
Yeah, I appreciate Vance's help, I guess, last week in separating out fire from fireworks. I think that was a nice improvement, and just this is should be part of a effort to inform the public of fire danger, and which will be a long-term effort, improving individual homeowners and landowners preparations, and what I've talked about before is this is a mainly educational effort with a little bit of enforcement to back it up. But so I appreciate the effort to kind of clarify what our intentions are, and I think I'm ready to make a motion unless there's other comments. Okay, I move to approve ordinance number 2022-0309, amending Benton County Code Chapter 32, and to conduct a first reading of the ordinance.
Second.
Vance.
All right, motion made and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, shall I do the first read?
Yes, sir. Please and thank you.
Before the Board of Commissioners for the State of Oregon for the County of Benton in the matter of amending Chapter 32 of the Benton County Code, ordinance number 2022-0309. The Benton County Board of Commissioners hereby ordain as follows. Short title, this ordinance shall be known as Amendment to Benton County Code Chapter 32. So with that first reading, we will bring this back for a second reading. And Joe, you may cringe, but that'll be on, it will be on May 3rd, unless you want this to wait later. If you recall, the idea behind pushing this through today was to have the first read done so that you could then hear from ODFW and any thoughts it may have on our ordinance, then come back with a second reading on this ordinance. So I think, Joe, we had talked about the ODFW showing up at a work session on Tuesday, May 17th. So my suggestion is that we hold the second reading of this ordinance on the business meeting on May 17th. So if that works for you all. Okay, so we will schedule it. Yes, sir.
Vance, I just wanted to underscore for the board that the meeting on May 17th, the inviting ODF, Oregon Department of Forestry, and some other partners, that is still being set for that date. So we're anticipating it will be May 17th, but it depends on the other organizations that will be attending, whether or not they can make it.
So, but we are required to set a date certain for that second read. So at this point, we'll push it to May 17, same bat time, same bat place. And if we have to postpone it later, then at that time we'll do so.
Vance, does that push the effective date back 2 weeks?
It pushes the effective date is 30 days after that second reading. So yes, if we had to push it beyond May 17th, that 30 days goes with it.
I would like to have this in effect by mid-June. So I would hope that we don't have to postpone it any further. Last year, I think fire season was declared May 16th or something like that, and hopefully it'll be later this year. But thank you.
All right, thank you. And with that, it looks like we can move into our executive session. And I think if we need I think we need a few minutes to do the transition. So let's come back at 12:35 for our executive session.
This conference is no longer being recorded.